Hello everybody. Today we're going to be looking at how to work with our variables. So let's go ahead and open up STATA. So a lot of times when you're looking at tutorial books, you'll find that you're working with example data sets. And the truth is, most likely, you're going to have to start whatever role that you're doing in which that you need to use data. Most likely, you're going to be starting by actually having to create the data as opposed to jump to the analysis stage. So you might find that this video is a little bit longer than some of the other ones, simply because there's a lot to cover, and it's pretty important stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. So there's a high possibility that if you are working in public health, you are entering data for some sort of survey. So the first thing you should know is that if you do have your data in Excel, you actually can copy it into STATA, just like you would kind of do a copy paste in other situations, right? So remember, we're going to go over to the data editor, and if you have data in Excel, you can come right over here and you can copy some data. This is kids going to detention. Copy that just like you usually would, and then you can paste it. Now, when you do that, it'll ask you if the first row are variable names or simply data. So in the case where I did it, the first row were variables, so I'm going to click variable names. And voila, you can see that I have all these different variables here. Okay, so let's pretend for a second that you don't actually have your data in Excel, and we will clear that off so that we can start with a nice fresh page. Okay, so we're going to go over to our data editor. Just like we did before, I cleared it off, so we have a nice clean slate here. Now, this is where you're going to start entering your data. It does look a lot like Excel, which I presume that you're pretty familiar with. It does have a couple of extra features that Excel doesn't have, as well as maybe some things that you might find difficult when you first start working with it. So if you're just starting out with some data, this is your first time, I would recommend kind of having a little bit of a practice log so that if you do make some mistakes that you can go back. It is a little harder to reverse mistakes in STATA than it is in Excel, so it's nice to have a little bit of practice before you get to there. So most likely, if you administered a survey or you're entering data from an administered survey, you have some sort of ID number for the surveys. So let's be simple with this, and let's assume that our ID numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? So when I did that, you can see that STATA automatically populated a name for this variable, simply named variable 1. So that's not a very descriptive name, and so if later on I'm trying to do some work, like I want to find out the code book for certain variables, it's easier if I have a more descriptive name. So I'm going to change the name of that variable by going to Data, Variables Manager, and here I can change the name. So I'm just going to write ID. Now, here's the thing about STATA that you should know for sure is that with the variable names, they are case sensitive. So it's sort of a custom with people who are entering data to just always do lowercase to keep things simple. Because you could very well have a variable name that's ID, lowercase I, lowercase d, and you could have another one that's like this, and those are two separate things. So it's just a little bit easier if you do two lowercase, or just to keep it all lowercase. And you definitely can't have any spaces, so if you do kind of want to create a space, you can do an underscore ID number, something like that. And then it's best to keep them short, because if you are typing in the name a lot when you're trying to analyze the data, it can be a little bit cumbersome if you have a very long name. And also, you're more likely to make a mistake with a longer name, so keep that in mind. Oh, and also it does have to start with the letter. You can't start with the number, but if you want to do like ID2 or something like that, you are welcome to do that. So let's go ahead and just leave this as ID, and I'm going to press apply. Okay, so now that we have ID here, we'll move on to our second variable. So when you create a survey, there are often discrete answers, right? So let's pretend for a second the first question you ask respondents is, what is the gender with which you identify? So you might be tempted to just type in female and male, which you can do. STATA will let you do that. So you just type it in right there. And you can see how it appears in red there. But a lot of times working, coding each one as a number will suit you later on. So what we can do is code female as 1 and male as 2, and then we can even put transgender as 3. This is another reason why it's not good to type it out, because it takes a long time. Now I've done that here just for you to be able to see, but what we're going to do is you can actually code these so that you can switch back and forth easily between the number and the word, and that's going to help you out later on. Before we do that, though, let's go ahead and change this variable name, just like we learned how to do. So just a reminder, we go to Data, Variables, Manager, and we are going to change the name to gender. Okay? And so, like I said before, I told you all those sort of tips and tricks for naming. However, sometimes we want a little more information about that name. So the label is where you get more information. So this one's a little bit obvious. If I just type in gender, it's pretty self-explanatory. But if I had something that said perhaps school, the label might go a little further in depth and say something to the idea of, school first college attended after high school, right? So school can mean a lot of different things. So that's where you would type this here, and we can just say we'll say identified gender, something of that nature. And here, you can use capitals, spaces, all that stuff. You can write just kind of how you normally would. So let's apply that. Oops, oh, I changed the wrong one. Look at me. See, this is why it's good to have to do a practice one, because then you'll probably make mistakes like me. And sometimes they are hard to reverse. So we'll say identified gender, and then we can apply, and you can see how that changed there. Now, 1, 1, 2, 3 might not, when you're just looking at it, you're not necessarily sure if male or female is 1, and you might not be sure what 3 is. So this is where we can actually create value labels. Okay, so I'm going to click Manage. I'm going to create a label, and I'm going to name this label gender. And I'm going to say that if I put 1, what that means is the respondent is female. If I put 2, the respondent is male. If I put 3, the respondent is transgender. And then let's get fancy. If I say 4, choose not to respond. Okay. So now I pressed OK, and so I'm going to close it out, and I'm going to apply that label to this right here, to our gender variable. I'm going to apply that, and as you can see, all these changed to the written word, but they're in blue, which means they are coded as a number, and you can see up here, it is still 1. This is 2, and then you can see that. And now, when I'm typing in the next one, let's say I want to put someone who chose not to respond. If I type the number 4, it'll automatically change it to choose not to respond. And let's say I forgot what they were. Well, I can just do 1, 2, and then they pop up like that. Great. So now you know how to create value labels and value names, and also the difference between how you should name a variable versus how you should label it, and creating different labels for it. And we don't need this column anymore because I was just using that to show you how it works. So let's actually look at how we drop that column. So notice that it's named variable 2. I'm going to X out of the data editor. And as you can see, all those things that I did in the data editor mode, they all appeared here. So notice I wanted, when we renamed variable, we typed in rename variable 3 gender. So let's do that for fun. down here. Clearly I have an odd definition of fun, right? So I'm going to say rename variable 2. That's what's going on right here. Rename variable 2. I want to rename it, extra, because we don't need it, right? Boom. So I did that there, and you can see it changed right there. So now I want to get rid of the variable completely, and so all I have to do is say drop variable 2. Oh, look, see, I changed the name and forgot to do that. So I'm going to do drop extra, and look at that, it's gone. It's just completely gone. Now, like I said, it is harder to reverse things when you are working in STATA as opposed to Excel. So be careful when you drop a variable. You might have lost just, a whole bunch of data on that. So let's move on to our next task. I want to open up the data editor again, and I'm going to actually open it up in the commands, or through the commands, just so you can see another way. So all I have to do is type in edit, and you can see that my data editor pops up. So let's now pretend our next question is, how many years of school have you had? So you might get people who are, 15 years in school. Maybe they just went through high school, so you got 12, something of that nature. Maybe someone's, getting their doctorate, they got 18. Now, a lot of times, a question gets skipped for some reason. We don't know why. Maybe the person skipped it on purpose. They didn't want to answer it. They didn't know how to answer it. So many times when you're creating a survey or looking at how to code answers to a survey, you actually will have skip codes. And in a situation like this, the skip codes are most likely to be negative because, you can have negative years of school, although I know when my students come back from the summer, sometimes it feels like that. So a lot of times there's a nomenclature that's decided upon between whoever is collecting and creating surveys and such, but it's very common to go about it this way. So -1 would be, -5 is often an invalid skip, right? So the interviewer forgot to ask the question or something of that nature. -4 could be a valid skip. So a valid skip might be that that question didn't apply to them. So sometimes it'll say, if answered yes, skip to question 10 or something of that nature, and this person responded accordingly. -3 might be refused to answer. I don't know why I'm typing incorrectly here. Refused to answer. -2 might be the respondent says they don't know. And then -1 is missing for any other reason. Now notice with all of those, I had sort of a, verbal way of explaining what those were, but you would want to go in and code them just like we did over here so that -5 would turn into the words invalid skip so that you would know. And just because it's bothering me to have this written as variable 3, we're gonna do this again. You're gonna get used to it. Variables manager, we're gonna call it we'll just call it school, like my example earlier. And the label can be years of education. And then here, again, you can create a skip code as well for those, but I'm just going to apply for now, just for the sake of ease, and close that out. Oh, did I not apply correctly? No, I did it again. Look at this. I changed the wrong variable. What are you going to do with me? Okay, let's see. So this one, what was I doing? What was this one? Oh, just the ID number. Apply. And then we'll go down to here. This is going to be school years of education completed. Getting fancier. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so in just a second we're going to learn how to group. To sort. So I just have to add a little bit of extra data just to make that possible. Okay, so this is pretty simple. I'm going to pull this right over here. Oops. And I can just type in sort gender, and you can see that the data instantly changed. So touch you a couple of basics with variables. Hopefully you find that helpful for your needs. I might do another video just to extend it a bit, but hopefully the very basics of entering data is helpful for you and your needs. Have a good one.